I've hosted visitors from around the world. I had a fellow here from New Delhi whose home group was responsible to translate the big book into Hindi. I had another visitor from Peru, 36 years sober, not very much English, but we finished up the tour up on the hill by Wits End, by Bill's writing studio. And he stood there looking at the house, and the tears flowing down his face because he said, Bill Wilson lived here. Bill Wilson lived here.
Ever since Bill and Lois Wilson moved here in 1941, many have journeyed to Stepping Stones as a homecoming, filled with gratitude for 12-step recovery, grateful for the Wilsons, and grateful for a life rescued from the devastating disease of alcoholism. Located in Katonah, New York, Stepping Stones is the historic home and archive of Alcoholics Anonymous co-founder Bill Wilson and Al-Anon Family Group's co-founder Lois Wilson.
Stepping Stones is where Bill and Lois Wilson helped AA and Al-Anon to blossom worldwide. This is where they nurtured it.
Bill and Lois spent so much time building Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon. They put so much love and energy into this home. Lois had such a vision that she wanted this to be a museum, and she frequently spoke of that when we were older and came to visit her.
Lois created the Stepping Stones Foundation in 1979 to preserve and continue to share the historic home and vast archive of 100,000 documents and photographs.
Almost everybody knows somebody who had trouble with alcohol. And if they're closer to you, you also know the frustration and the heartbreak of not being able to help them. When Lois and Bill got together and got married, he hadn't had a drink. Then he had his first drink, then he went completely off the rails.
The couple was blindsided when Bill was in Army training because he began to have problems with alcohol. When he shipped off to Europe to serve in World War I, his drinking continued. By the time he returned, it had taken control, and his life began to unravel.
For 17 years of his drinking, she stuck by him and tried to help him recover, and never found the magic. Then Ebby shows up, tells him about work he'd done in the Oxford group and the steps he took. Bill gets sober. And then from then on, Bill is devoting all of his time and energy to making this program work, creating a structure that would keep AA alive past his lifetime.
At 5 months sober, Bill sought to help another alcoholic in order to keep himself sober. He helped Dr. Bob, and together they founded AA. Eager to share the message, Bill poured his energies into developing the book Alcoholics Anonymous, which laid out the 12-step program. While working on what is known as the AA Big Book, Bill and Lois's resources were scarce.
In 1939, they were foreclosed in the home they had in Brooklyn, and for 2 years they were homeless. And a woman who had built this house heard about Lois and Bill's plight, and she said, "This is terrible. These people are giving everything they've got to help people like my friend Joan, who got sober, and they don't have a place to stay."
In 1941, the woman who built the house, Helen Griffith, offered it to the Wilsons for just $40 a month. This first home of their own, Stepping Stones, was a godsend to Bill and Lois.
The house was built in 1920, and a great deal of it is still the way it was when it was built. They didn't spend money on renovations. They weren't worried about impressing others with the latest gadgets. All the cabinets in the kitchen are still from 1920. The original sink is there.
From my earliest memories, this house really hasn't changed. The furniture hasn't changed. Nothing's changed.
Much of the furniture came from Lois's family. An antique writing desk was brought from Europe by Lois's aunts. The drop-leaf dining table was built by Bill's grandfather in Vermont. Their bed was from Lois's parents. It is the bed she was born on.
They were not into adornment. Lois continued to make many of her own clothes. Upstairs, there's a dressmaker's dummy and her little crafts corner with a sewing machine. In the kitchen, there's an enormous number of coffee cups because on Saturday morning, people would show up and have a cup of coffee and fellowship. Some of them were invited and a lot of them weren't, and they just heard that Lois and Bill were around on Saturday morning and they would show up.
Lois and Bill were opening their doors to strangers. And I think there was a great lesson that we all learned from them about community and helping others and inviting them into your house with your own family.
What was important to them was AA and being of service. Visitors and members of AA who had questions would just stop by. Imagine your house if 24/7, 365, people just had a question. They thought it was fine to just come over, knock on the door. Can I talk to Bill Wilson? I got a question. And they were welcomed.
And they didn't judge anybody, you know? They weren't judgmental at all. If I came in here as a guest who had just recently found sobriety, had I even shown up drunk, they would have still opened their door and sat down and talked to people. They didn't write anybody off, no. Lois didn't write Bill off. That was the beginning of it.
Lois and Bill wanted to have children, and they were not able to. But later on, speaking at one of the conventions, Lois shared with the audience that she felt all of them were her children, that was the kind of relationship they had, that these were the people that they wanted to help find their way back to a really good life, a sober life.
Lois adored little kids. One of Lois's favorite things when we walked into the house as kids was, "Oh, my dear." That was every time, "Oh, my dear."
The parents would share with the children that Lois liked to collect things. She liked to collect seashells. She liked to collect dinosaurs. The response from the children would be, "Lois likes dinosaurs? I like dinosaurs. Let's bring Lois a dinosaur." So for years, children visiting would bring Lois a dinosaur.
I realized how very generous they were. Everybody needs a community. Everybody needs somebody to embrace them when they need to be embraced.
I do know that Bill 12-stepped a number of people in this living room. Lois sewed the slip covers on the sofa, and Bill would sit there with a cup of coffee and talk to somebody who's trying to get sober. We have the table from the house at 182 Clinton Street in Brooklyn, the table that was in the kitchen when Ebby brought Bill the message and helped Bill to get sober. The table in the kitchen is always a high point for our visitors because that moment, it's very key in our history.
During the 1940s and 50s, Bill and Lois traveled around the U.S. and the world to build understanding about AA and later Al-Anon. They often stayed with local groups. Stepping Stones contains lots of souvenirs and gifts. Heartfelt expressions of gratitude to Lois and Bill.
Lois was a very talented woman. She could paint, she could sew, and she played the piano. And Bill, as a child, taught himself to play the violin.
Lois and Bill always played music while we were here. Sometimes Bill would play the violin, sometimes he plays cello, and Lois played the piano.
Part of how Bill and Lois nurtured and helped AA and Al-Anon to blossom was by the writing that they did here.
Wits End was Bill's writing studio. He always called it the shack. It was a wonderful, quiet spot. In Wits End is the desk that came from that office in Newark where Bill worked on writing the big book.
In the writing studio, he wrote the book, The 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. He wrote AA Comes of Age and As Bill Sees It. In addition to those books, he wrote over 100 AA Grapevine magazine articles and hundreds of letters, if not thousands, and dozens of speeches, including some that he gave to government bodies or medical societies.
Bill and Lois understood that spouses and family members of the alcoholics needed their own support. This prompted the founding of Al-Anon family groups.
Lois knew that she needed a 12-step recovery program of her own. She was also nudged by Bill a little bit to get it started. So she got it started right here at Stepping Stones in 1951, at this very desk, working with her friend Ann B., writing letters to people to see if they would join. That was even before it was named Al-Anon.
In her later years, after Bill's death, Lois continued to travel and to nurture the growth of Al-Anon and later Alateen.
It has been said that one of America's greatest exports is the program of recovery that is the 12 Steps, which was drafted by Bill W. They estimate over 2 million people in AA alone, not even to mention the other 12-step recovery programs that have modeled after AA. Their story, the Wilson story, is a great American story of hope for what happened to them personally and what it's been able to do for other people.
Preservation of this historic site and the original materials is a massive undertaking that all are invited to support.
I think to preserve it is an important legacy. It's my legacy, but it's any alcoholic or anybody in Al-Anon or Alateen, it's their legacy as well. To some extent, they wouldn't be here.
When we hear from people after they've made a visit to Stepping Stones, we usually hear that their recovery has been strengthened. They felt more motivated or more equipped to go back and share their recovery with others. Seeing the example of the Wilsons can be very inspiring. We have about 10,000 objects, multiple buildings, 8 acres. There's quite a big preservation challenge, and with a lot of help from a lot of people and a lot of support, we can meet the challenge.
It's a joy to tell people the story and show them the place. On one hand, it's just a house. On the other hand, it's Lois and Bill's house, and a lot took place here. And that's the important thing. Not the stuff, not the things, but what they did here. They were ordinary people doing truly extraordinary things. Truly extraordinary things.
The Wilsons' beloved Stepping Stones belongs to all of us now. There's much work to be done to share and maintain it for the future. Please help by going to steppingstones.org to donate, volunteer from anywhere, explore online events and the archive, plan a visit, and sign up for emails. You can introduce your friends to Stepping Stones by sharing this video. Thank you.